Paralympic Games being played in Sochi this week have once again focused attention on the talented athletes from around the world who have overcome a variety of disabilities to compete there. They inspired us to look into the status of a global treaty that would directly affect them and others with disabilities. I recorded this report a few days ago. It's a landmark of sorts at the Paralympic Games, a wall commemorating the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. In fanfare last week, the convention aims to make sure that those with disabilities have equality under the law, access to public places and facilities, and basic education. Thousands have signed the wall in Sochi, including American athletes. However, the country that sent them there is one of the few dozen countries in the world that have not ratified the convention the wall celebrates. Despite the fact the treaty is based on the Americans with Disabilities Act, passed by Congress in 1990, this Congress hasn't ratified the treaty.
Primarily, it prevents discrimination against disabled people who might be traveling abroad, and it also gives us a seat at the table.
We're going to be held responsible and accountable.
Bob Dole is the former Senate Majority Leader and Republican presidential nominee who lost the use of his right arm after he was wounded in World War II.
Support is wide, so we just have to make our case, and we're doing it almost every day. We're working on some way to convince members that this is the right thing to do.
Opponents of the treaty say that it gives the United Nations jurisdiction over local and state laws.
Isabella is our youngest child. She is a special gift to us.
Former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum is one of those opponents. He's also the father of a young daughter with a developmental disability.
We already have laws that protect everything that is in this convention. We already meet or exceed what this convention calls for. There's no benefit to the United States from passing it. There's no benefit to any children here in the United States from passing it.
It's so decided.
The convention was adopted by the UN in 2006. President Obama in 2009.
The Senate will come to order.
It went to a vote on the Senate floor in December 2012, but fell 6 votes short. Last fall, opponents managed to scuttle another attempt to get the treaty before the Senate. So far, a vote on the issue has not been scheduled for 2014. Joining us to talk about the prospects for a vote on the convention and 2 points of view on what it means for the United States is Representative Jim Langevin of Rhode Island and Michael Ferris. He's Chancellor of Patrick Henry College in Virginia and the Chairman of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. We welcome you both to the program. Congressman Langevin, let me start with you. What would this convention mean for countries around the world if it were ratified in all these countries?
The ratification would mean so much in terms of protecting the rights of persons with disabilities around the world, ensuring protecting their human dignity, and ensuring that they enjoy the same protections that people with disabilities enjoy here in the United States. This is both a policy statement, but it's also a policy in substance that would ensure that many of the things that we enjoy here now, and sometimes maybe even take for granted because of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, would be now set forth for other nations to aspire to and to adhere to as well.
But it would not have enforcement mechanisms, is that right?
No, in the sense this is ratifying the treaty sets out broad principles to which nations would aspire to when they're passing their laws or when they're reviewing their laws and their access to public accommodations, or even how they treat people with disabilities, that people with disabilities aren't brushed aside, but they are actually, it would be included in society. Again, in many ways the treaty is such that it's very aspirational and encourages nations to adopt the kind of laws and enact the kind of laws that we have enacted, both with the Americans with Disabilities Act and the ADA Amendments Act, which has made such a profound difference in the lives of people with disabilities. I was injured before the ADA was passed. I was injured in 1980, and I can tell you the ADA has made a profound difference in my life and that of people with disabilities across this country.
Let me ask Mr. Ferris then, why do you oppose the ratification of this convention?
Treaties are not merely aspirational documents. They're international law. They have binding legal effects. And the legal effects have different approaches in different nations, depending on that nation's own constitution relative to how they treat international law. But they're creating a binding legal obligation to obey the standards that are set forth in the treaty. There were aspirational documents. The UN has a declaration on the rights of persons with disabilities. Nothing wrong with the declaration. I'm all for these aspirational statements. But I believe that the United States should make the law for itself, and that I don't believe that using international law to control domestic policy is the most effective way to deliver the kind of services that we need for our disabled community.
Even though the language here is based on existing law in the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act, what is it that would be different about the UN Convention from what's already law?
Well, there's several differences in the UN treaty. The rules on guardianships are different. The rules on families with disabled children are different. Right now, the law in the United States for families with disabilities, our parents are the presumptive decision makers for their children in every case, unless there's proof of harm. Article 7 of this treaty changes that rule from a presumption parental authority to a presumption that the best interest of the child standard controls, which is not a question about what is decided, but who makes the decisions. That decision, that rule in Article 7 means the government is the presumptive decision maker for children. It's a big shift in law and would take away rights that we have under the IDEA, for example.
And that's a reference to educating children.
Right.
Congressman Langevin, how do you respond quickly to this point about the change in the convention?
So 2 points. First of all, there is already a U.S. Supreme Court decision that says that these treaties that would be ratified by the United States are basically saying they are international commitments, but do not have the force of law. And that's clear in a U.S. Supreme Court decision involving the state of Texas. The second of which is the RUDs, if you will, the reservations, understandings, and declarations that have been adopted by the United States Senate make it clear that it would not infringe on parents' rights in terms of either educating their children or the other arguments that the Chancellor has raised.
Well, you want to respond to that, and then I want to pick up on this because a number of Republicans are arguing in favor of this. Senator John McCain, former Attorney General Richard Thornburgh, Senator Bob Dole, as we saw.
There are a number of people that are on the moderate side of the Republican Party that have supported the treaty. But the basic question is, do we want to make our policy decisions for this country using international law or American law? The congressman has properly described his view as setting an aspirational standard. What we don't need is more aspiration. We need more implementation. And the disabled community has some legitimate complaints about the way families are being treated right now under our own policy. Rather than wasting time on this aspirational document, we should really be dealing with trying to implement good policy to help disabled people overcome some of the barriers that still exist.
And just very quickly, the congressman point about the United Nations, I'm sorry, that the Supreme Court has said that this kind of language would not supersede American law.
Well, I filed briefs in the Supreme Court on this very issue, and I have a degree in international law. His point is relative to the technical meaning of implementation. Do the judges implement it, or does Congress have the implementation power? We have a duty when we ratify to obey it. Congress has a duty to implement.
In just a few words, Congressman Langevin.
The RUDs, the reservations, understanding, declarations, make it very clear that there is no one that has standing to sue in a U.S. court, for example, to require the states to do anything that that they do not want to do under the treaty. It doesn't supersede U.S. law, and it's been made very clear that this document will encourage other nations to aspire to what we have achieved in the United States. It is such important, and it weakens our argument if we don't pass and ratify this treaty.
All right, gentlemen, we are going to have to leave it there. Congressman Jim Langevin, Michael Ferris, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.